Hi, my name is Parkson, and I'm the head of programs at the Center for Fathering. Today, I will be speaking with Dan Tang, founder and principal of KidStartNow, a Chinese enrichment center that combines AI with engaging teachers to help children excel and enjoy learning Chinese. The path that led Dan to start KidStartNow is an unusual one, and I will let him tell you all about it. Hi, Dan, and thank you for agreeing to speak with me on learning Chinese.
No problem, and thanks for having me.
So, can you share with us how did you come to set up Kickstart now?
Oh yeah, sure. As you were mentioning, it's a little bit of it's a little complicated path, I would say. So my background is I grew up in an English-speaking family, so I grew up disliking Chinese, right? The only thing I didn't dislike were Chinese games, and that's because we didn't really have a choice. Like I liked playing this strategy game called Romance of the Three Kingdoms, and it was only available in Chinese, and that was the only thing that I did that was voluntarily regarding Chinese because I love the game. But traditional academic learning of Chinese, I didn't like my teacher. She didn't like me. So this continued all the way until college. So I went to study in America, and when I studied in America, like I didn't have any opportunity to use the language at all. So obviously, my Chinese standard grew even weaker. But it was quite interesting that I had an opportunity to work for a really to work in finance in the tech sector in Taiwan, covering the tech sector, and it was a really good opportunity. So I actually took it despite being horrible in the language, and I mean horrible. Maybe I can talk more about it later, but basically. After about 2 years, I grew to really enjoy the language. And then I was like thinking like, hey, this 2 or 3 years in Taiwan, I built up a lot of like, understanding of how technology works. And I grew to really go from hating the language to really liking it. And then I was realizing that, actually many of the kids in Singapore right now, they are like me, English speaking families dislike the language, probably even worse than me, right? Because even less opportunities to use the language now. And so I decided to come back to Singapore to create an enrichment center that tries to combine technology with a very more engaging and more encouraging approach to learning the language. Yeah, and since then, we've helped thousands of students, grow from really disliking the language to really enjoying and excelling at it.
Well, I wish that you were here around some 40 years ago so that you could help me because,
Yeah,
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 I'm
yeah.
just like you, growing up in an English speaking
Mm,
home.
mm.
Although my mother speaks Hokkien and
Yes,
my
yes.
father speaks Teochew and
Yeah.
Cantonese, I never picked it up. I mean, because we basically spoke English nearly all the
Mm,
time
mm, mm,
in
mm.
at home. And the first time that I actually spoke a dialect was when I was in the army, and people
Oh,
were
okay.
laughing at me because
Oh,
it
dear.
didn't sound good.
Oh, dear.
What I've recently understood is that learning English and learning Chinese, uh, as far as your brain is concerned,
Mm,
it works differently.
mm.
It doesn't use the same, neurocircuitries, because Chinese is more pictorial.
Yeah.
English, is yes, alphabets, but there's phonetics and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to the brain, a new different circuitry has to be formed and used in order to be good in Chinese. Yeah, so that's why when you call bilingual, it's really it's two sets of circuits in your brain.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree. And that's why there are a lot of benefits to being bilingual. And it's interesting because I mean, in Singapore, right, for most parents, we think like being bilingual is kind of a given and kind of a chore, really, because like, oh, I need to take exam for PSLE or, I need to force my child to do it. But if you actually look at literature, like say from the States or from Europe, there's actually a trend of trying to encourage bilingualism, not necessarily to learn Chinese, but because learning a second language has benefits in one, improving the neural circuits in your brain, so making you, I guess, smarter, right? And the other benefit is actually the ability to think from a multiple perspectives. So like even just a slight tangent to this, but I've noticed that when I speak English and when I speak Chinese, my approach, my philosophy completely changes. So like, because I've been working in Taiwan for some time, and a lot of my family has been living in Taiwan. So like when I speak Chinese, I tend to be a little bit more indirect. I tend to be a lot more not. I want to say, okay, to say it, I'm a lot more polite, right? But I guess the better saying in Chinese is 委婉. So like, and that's because that's how we say things in Taiwan. So we weren't that be so overly blunt or overly direct. And it's just very interesting because like just having the ability to kind of like, switch between mindsets allows me to take different approaches to solving a problem. And I guess that's something that's pretty, really useful. Not talking about, just business opportunities and stuff. And that's kind of also one of the reasons why we are really trying to encourage kids to really don't think of Chinese just purely as a PSLE subject. And once I'm done in PSLE or done with O levels or whatever, I'm done with the language. But purely think of this something like how can we actually encourage kids to really take to develop a real engagement and mastery of the language, such that after your 12 years or whatever of Chinese, it's a lifelong skill that you can take with you, whether in a recreational setting or in a business kind of setting.
You say that traditional Chinese learning methods are outdated. I got this from your Facebook page. Can you help to explain in what way, why that's the case, and in what way is your approach of teaching the language different?
Okay. Well, let me just preface that by saying I don't wish to create like a straw man argument here, right? So there are many, Chinese teachers who are doing their best to change the mindset or to change the traditional way of teaching, and they're doing a great job, right? But so let me just paint to you what I feel is the more traditional approach, right? Which is you have 10, 20 kids in a classroom. It's completely quiet except for scribbling sounds, and the scribbling sounds is kids looking at a blackboard and just writing down whatever is on the blackboard, right? This actually happens very often right now in composition classes, for instance. There's a fun well-known model essay, the teacher teaches it, and the kids just scribble. They may or may not recognize or understand what they're doing, but they just have to memorize huge chunks of these passages. So that's just compo. Or in a classroom setting whereby the students are not really engaged, it's a very one-way form of teaching, right? So the teacher is just telling you, okay, this, and then the child is either doing assignments or just not paying attention, right? Or, you have classrooms whereby, I mean, it's a little bit of a stereotype, but I think there's a certain amount of truth in it, in that Chinese teachers can sometimes come off as being very fierce. And I think it's also partially because many kids don't really enjoy being in the learning Chinese. So there's this like aversion to the language. And when there's aversion to the language, sometimes teachers are a little bit stricter to try to
it's like trying to get kids to eat vegetables.
Yes, exactly. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I completely empathize with it because sometimes it's very difficult to avoid it. And even in some of our classes, in the upper primary classes, we have to take a little bit of a stricter approach as well, right? But as a whole, there is this caricature of Chinese teaching being boring, lacking interactivity, and teachers being, I guess, not as encouraging. And that's personally what I have experienced. And talking to many parents, they tell me that it's what their kids are experiencing. I'd like to make a differentiation here that this doesn't really refer to preschool teaching. I'm referring mainly to primary school Chinese learning. So that is what Chinese teaching is like, right? So what we try to do is we try to take, I guess, a 3D approach. So that stands for engagement, encouragement, and efficiency. So the most important thing is like we talked about just now is how do you make the language learning meaningful while still ensuring that you're preparing them for their final examination, be it like a SA2 or a PSLE. So what we try to do is to use a little bit of what we call gamification in the classroom. So, when kids answer questions, you provide them with, coins and digital points. They see that they are improving and they pay more attention. I mean, we see that there are many teachers from different subjects are also using it in their classrooms as well. And I think that's great because that's a positive trend towards making learning more interactive, right? But it's not only just using digital tools. So in the classroom, what we focus a lot is how do you break away from the mode of whereby it's one teacher just saying and the teacher just students just writing. So we want to encourage more open dialogue with the students. So more like small question and answer, making sure that every child has a chance to interact with the teacher. And of course, it's one thing to say that, but how do you actually get it? I mean, it's like let's say you go to a traditional classroom and the teacher was like, "Do you have any questions?" And the classroom is silent, right? So how do you encourage that? So one way that we do it is that we have digital games in the classroom. Like let's say we have a very simple but effective game is we have this hamburger game whereby it's on the TV we have like split screen. So there's a red team and a blue team, and each time the red team answers a question, the teacher presses a button, and then like a slice of a cheese or tomato comes down on the TV. It's if you think about it, it's actually like kind of like the traditional star system, but on digitalized on steroids. And kids love it, right? They love the feeling of like, oh, I'm improving, I'm having my team, and they don't even realize that they're answering questions. But what we find is that once kids start interacting with the teacher, right? Once they think this is a regular occurrence, then even when we don't use the game, they are much more likely to actually answer questions or ask teachers whenever there's this more to and flow. And I think that sort of environment of engagement is what we want to encourage in a classroom, especially when you're learning Chinese, right? So that's the first E, engagement. The second E, it comes down to encouragement. Now, I think as a parent, you might think, well, it's pretty obvious, isn't it? I mean, teachers should encourage, right? But if you take a step back, even many parents are not very encouraging when their kids are trying to learn Chinese, right? In fact, one of the most common advice we have to tell parents, right? And I know this sounds like obvious, but it's when your child makes mistakes in Chinese, try not to criticize them. So, like for instance, right? So the very common is let's say I pronounce a word wrongly, for instance. So let's say mama, I pronounce it like mama or whatever, right? The most common reaction is like, oh, that's not correct. That's not correct. You should be saying this, right? And we get where you're coming from because you're trying to tell the child that, oh, there's a proper way of saying it. But if you're talking to a very young child, what tends to happen is that kids will tend to get demoralized and might not even want to say it again because they feel like, oh, I'm bad at language, or like I said something and I get corrected. But they don't think of it as corrected. They think of it as, like I did something wrong, right? So the approach that we encourage,
more like being mocked or ridiculed, laughed
exactly. And obviously parents don't
creates shame in
that,
them, yeah.
right? Exactly. So what we encourage is you must first praise the effort, right? Say, oh, especially if your child doesn't normally speak Chinese, right? You want to really encourage them to say that, oh, that's great. And then you can tell them that, oh, you can try saying it this way, right? That's more for preschool kids. For primary school kids, we tell parents that please don't tell your child that their Chinese is bad. Because we would get many parents when they bring the kids to see us, right? And before we enter the classroom, they'll say, oh, 我小孩中文很不行. And then we're like, well, wait, you shouldn't be saying this in front of your child. So the child comes to the classroom and they're like, oh, yeah, 我妈妈说我中文不行，我老师说我中文不行，我中文就是不行. And we want to tell parents, we want to tell kids that it does not matter where your language is right now, as long as you improve. And if you work hard and you revise, you practice, you will improve and you will get better. It doesn't matter where you are at right now, right? And so when we work with teachers, we tell them the most important thing is that we want you to be encouraging. And I think just now as I mentioned, my teacher was encouraging to me when I was young. So I guess it kind of sparked this fire in me that I want students to come into a classroom and feel that they can do this. Chinese is hard, yes, but I can do it. That is the kind of growth mindset that we want to inculcate in our students. Right, so there's a second E, which is encouragement. And the third E is very simple, efficiency, right? Because no matter how engaging the class is, no matter how encouraging the teacher is, students probably don't want to revise Chinese. Well, students don't want to revise most subjects in general, right? They rather be playing or,
they don't want to do homework.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to do homework, right? But in particular, they don't want to do Chinese homework, right? So how do you make the process more efficient? So, we use AI systems to track the child's progress. So if things that they already know or probably not so important, we try to minimize things that they are lacking or are quite important. Then we try to have the question appear more often whenever they're revising. So basically the idea is that we know you're busy. How can we make the most of this limited revision time that you're doing? Yeah. So that's the third E, efficiency. And so how we differ from other schools: engagement, encouragement, and efficiency.
Do you think that the reason why Chinese teachers in schools teach the way they do is because whether consciously or unconsciously, there is a pressure to make sure the kids, score well. And I guess that's also the expectations and the hopes of parents, that, at the end of the day, it all comes down to grades, isn't it? It's not about learning. It's not about appreciating the language or even appreciating the culture that you get to know through learning the language. And I say that because I've lived overseas and I've learned 2 foreign languages, even though I failed my Chinese, and I began to appreciate the culture. For example, in the language that I learned, both languages, when, the word for you, there is a formal and there is an informal version.
Yes.
Right. And that tells me that, in these two cultures, respect of the elder and the in terms of ranking, seniority, and all this is important, and it is reflected in their language. All right. But in English, for example, or maybe even in Chinese, there isn't a distinction. So you have to add to it. For example, in English, Your Highness, Your Excellency.
Yes.
Yeah, or at most you call the person sir or madam,
Yes,
but
yes,
that's
yes.
again very general. So
Yeah,
again,
yeah.
coming back to grades, right? So I guess maybe teachers feel the pressure to just pump the kids with vocabulary, making them memorize it, making them
Mm.
know how to use it in sentences, all right? Otherwise, they may be seen as not doing their jobs.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think it's two parts to this, and don't get me wrong. I think teachers they're doing their best. They're doing a great job, and there are many
Definitely,
teachers that are changing
definitely.
the mode. But I think the problem is the examination structure and family environment. So let's talk about something. I guess something called perverse incentives here. So are you aware that the PSLE system has changed for Chinese, the scoring?
No.
Okay, so just a quick change, just a quick note. Several years ago, they changed the scoring. So in the past, composition was the most important, right? And they decided to change it up and now make oral the most important component. It's now 25% versus 20% for composition. Now, you might think that's a great thing because back in my days, oral was easy, right? It's just like, read aloud and there's a picture composition which you can easily memorize, right? And so my headcanon theory is that they one is that they made oral more important, but two, they changed the format to try to make it less rote learning because it's now so like the two new changes like it's now they watch a video and then they're supposed to talk about the video, right? So in no longer just a static picture, and there's also like dialogue questions. So like they ask you to talk about a particular topic. Now this kind of changes, right, is actually great because it actually really tests whether are you actually genuinely good at the language. Are you able to hold a conversation with this? And in my opinion, that's the most important part of learning a language, right? The ability to hold a conversation. But the problem is that given the whole, I guess, Singaporean kiasu mentality, or really what we've done, not we, but I mean, as a whole, Singaporeans, is that we've just basically taken to memorizing like whole video scenarios or to memorize whole topic stuff, right? So
We
it was
always find a way
supposed
around the system,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. You were supposed to. It was supposed to make it harder to memorize. But what actually it just ended up is just that people just spend more time trying to memorize it instead, right? I remember it's kind of similar to back when I was doing A levels, and they tried to move for the physics questions. They tried to move away from too much definition questions to more like application questions that test whether you could actually understand it, right? It was meant to really differentiate students. But what ended up is that everyone started just focusing on memorizing the application questions, but just doing a lot of application questions. So I guess sometimes it's just like perverse incentives. So going back to like the why I bring this up is that the PSLE system scoring has changed, but it remains the end goal, right? So for many teachers, they know that I need to get students to a certain level. And the truth is vocabulary is the foundation for languages, right? This is not the same as like, math or science, whereby you could be studying like theories or heuristics. And once you get it, you get it. You can jump grade very quickly. With Chinese, it's something that's regular practice. And regular practice, there's not much grammar involved in Chinese compared to English, right? So it's really just about 好词家句 vocab. And that's why there's so much emphasizing on memorizing, right? And just to take a little step back and just a slight tangential story again. So like I went to Cornell, right? So and we had a placement examination for Chinese. And one of the placement essay, what the examination was basically write a composition, but the topics never really changed. So what a lot of my Singaporean friends did was to basically memorize the various topics, and literally they will recite the entire essay out, right? And it was really funny because like one of my friends who was actually Singaporean Chinese, in the sense that she was born in China, came over at 10. Her Chinese is amazing. But she actually flunked the exam because she didn't memorize the composition. And she wrote a great essay, but she had a few mistakes in the characters. Not so much the flow, but just like, 写错字. And because there was a limit to the number of 写错字you could get, and then you flunked. So we were like, wow, her essay is amazing, but she flunked because she didn't meet the metric. And that's one proof that this Chinese grading style is not a Singaporean problem. It's an everywhere problem, right? And two, sometimes a lot of times for parents, we feel that we need to, or teachers, we need to skate to the metric. And what's the metric? The metric is that, okay, 好词佳句, don't have too many 错别字, right? So that's what you're going to focus on. Memorize this, make sure you don't get it wrong. So if that's the case, I mean, it's very difficult to I mean, I empathize with the task that many teachers have to face. And also keep in mind that, in most enrichment classes, it's small. It's like 10 students or less, maybe 12 students at most. There is opportunities to really, have more interaction with the child. In a large classroom, maybe it's 20 or 25, and there's greater discrepancy in the level of the student. You could have kids who are really, really good, and you have kids who are like barely passing the language or worse. It's very difficult for the teacher to be able to teach effectively, right? So in that sense, enrichment centers like ourselves, we do have a natural advantage in that the classes are smaller and the difference in the student standards tend to be lower. Yeah.
So maybe when it comes to language, I think this could apply to English also.
Yeah.
You need to group the students according to their proficiency and, teach them as a group rather than just as a class of 40 students. And like you say, they're all at different levels. And you're just trying to hit it somewhere in the middle, and the teacher might get it right, may not get it right, and the ones who are weaker are expected to just catch up, and those who are better just fall asleep.
I mean, to just add a note to that, to a certain extent, the schools are doing that. So in P1 and P2, there's foundational Chinese, and so students who are extremely weak tend to get filtered to the classes. But even when you still do that, you still have quite a big discrepancy within the remaining class. And there's a second slight problem, which is not really talked about, which is that for many foundational Chinese students, when they get filtered into a smaller class, sometimes there's an impact on their psyche. So like they feel that, oh, I'm kind of labeled as a weak student, and it can be difficult for them to break out and go back to the normal classroom, even though they're giving a lot more resources. So I mean, it's a double-edged sword. So I also don't have the answer to that, and honestly, it's a tough problem that many schools are having. But we just want to point out that schools are trying to do it, but probably it's not an easy problem to solve in a government school setting.
In your center, you use AI, and I think you mentioned it a little in terms of the tracking. And when it comes to revision, the AI will focus on certain areas where the student is relatively weaker in, and so that the student doesn't need to revise the whole syllabus, or whatever was taught the last week or something like that.
Yeah.
Elaborate a bit more how AI comes in your center.
Sure. So let me specifically focus on vocabulary first, because I think that's key. And I think that it can be broadly broken down into two portions. The first portion is how do you revise words which are taught? Let's say you're a P4 child, okay? So you join our center, P4, you come in, and then let's say every week you learn new words, and some words you learn faster, some words you learn slower. How do I track to know that, one, which words do I actually know how to use? Two, if I already know the meaning of this word, what if I'm tested an application question about this word? So to give you an example, so let's say the word is 公园, for instance, right? So at the most elementary level, you want to check, okay, when given the word 公园, is the child able to recognize the word, right? And then the second level would be, let's say you're given a picture of a garden. Are you able to say it's 公园? Now, the third test would be, let's say there's a multiple choice question. 爸爸和妈妈带我去 blank one, right? And then let's say you're given 4 choices. Are you able to select that garden or 公园 was the correct one? So there are different levels of knowledge, and what the system does is that we track you and we try to how should I say, provide you with the most appropriate level of question based on where the system thinks you are at, right? So there's a tracking system and there's a kind of a scaffolding system. And that's great because we find that many kids, many parents tell us that, it really helps them improve. And if they can read better, it obviously flows everything into composition and comprehension. So that's more for revision. There's another problem, which I think is less talked about, which is that, let's say you're a P4 child. What if you've forgotten your P2 words? These words are not directly retaught, but they appear in your textbook and they reappear in your comprehension, right? And because they're not directly tested, it can be difficult to figure out, do I actually know this word or do I actually not know this word? Or let's say, especially if this child is new to our system, right? You come in at a P4 level, I can test you P4 questions, right? But how do I know whether you've known a P1, P2, or P3 word, right? Am I really going to test you every single word for P1, P2, and P3? It's great if you do it, by the way, but it's a Herculean task, right? And time is of the essence. So what we've done is that we built machine learning models, which, let's say, based on the fact that you know XYZ word in P4, the system can approximate, like, okay, I think that there's a good chance that you really know these words, and there's a high chance that you probably don't know these words. And then when you are retested, the words that they think it knows, it updates the system. And how we do it is that there are various heuristics around that. One is based on the fact that, okay, your learning profile matches a learning profile of another child in our system, and we can make recommendations based on it. Another thing that a new thing that we've been launched recently is just by doing high frequency words. So what we've done is, I think this is a lot of parents actually find it very useful. So we took, like, let's say a primary 1 textbook, we digitalized the whole textbook, right? And we then combined that with like spelling lists, assessment book questions into a list, a huge corpus. A corpus means body of text. And we then ran an analyzer, and then we decided and we calculated what are the most common like phrases or words that appear. And based on this, we can assign like certain like values. Because if, let's say, the word, so like, give you an example, P1A, the most common phrase was 喜欢 or to like, right? So if you want to be smart about it, make sure you know the word 喜欢because it appears the most, right? So in forms of revision, that's what heuristics that we use. So let's say a P4 child come in, if you don't have a lot of time, we might be testing you, the most frequent words that appear in P1, P2, and P3 first. Just to save time, make sure you know these basics. And then from there, the system has a better idea. And then you can use machine learning to determine, okay, these are if you've already been tested, the top 30 words that appear in P1, P2, and P3. Now, these are the next 30 words that the system wants to ascertain in that, whether you know or not. So in this way, we can help you completely revise P1 to P4 as quickly as possible.
Wow, sounds complicated.
I mean, okay, so that's just the technical detail, but I think the end result is very simple. The system knows that you are busy as a parent, busy as a child. So what we are trying to do is just to, in your limited time, help you revise as efficiently as possible, and not just your level, but also your previous levels.
This software is available. That means every parent or child can purchase it, use it, download it in their laptop, so it's something that the parent needs to supervise the child, or can the child do it all by himself or herself?
Okay, so there are multiple parts to our portal, which is free, by the way. It's free, and then there's, if you want to purchase premium features, it's a slight cost. So we have different parts to it. So we have a what we call daily challenge, which is a vocab quiz. We have a pet battle, which is it's kind of like think like Pokemon meets assessment book questions. So the idea behind it is very simple. If a child is quizzed on, let's say, like the question just now, right? 爸爸带我去公园, right? Right? And so if you answer it correctly, your pet attacks. And if you succeed, you capture another pet, which you can then level it and stuff. And we find that kids really love it because there's an incentive to actually answer correctly. So one of the common complaints that we get from parents about, some other e-learning software is that if I force my child to do it, they don't care whether it's correct or wrong, right? They just go to like, whatever, ABCD, ABCD. But in this, what we've done is that they need to answer correctly to actually play, right? And that really gets kids motivated. And this portion itself is, kids can do it on their own. Parents don't need to supervise. I mean, the parents don't need to revise. They can just make sure that they do it, right? We have other parts of the portal, which is like video lessons, where basically we've taken, our actual lessons that we conduct in our center with, kind of like taken the essence of it. So and squeezed it into 20, 30-minute videos. Parents tell us it's great value because it's like attending a class, right? That one requires a little bit more prodding from parents because most kids on their own violation and they're not going to sit down for 20, 30 minutes. So like one of our parents who actually used the portal, what she tells us is that I make my child do the 20, 30-minute video and do it together with the worksheets. And his reward for doing it is he gets to play the pet battle, which is like what we talk about, like the Pokemon pet game. And then the mother is actually very smart because like he doesn't realize that his reward is actually also revising Chinese. So the mother is like, yeah, this is a great way for me to get my child to revise. Yeah, so it depends on what portion of the portal you're doing. Yeah.
If parents listening to this wants to find that software, do they go to your website? So it's a web-based portal?
Yes, it's a web-based portal. It can be accessed from the any phone, tablet, or computer. I think we can probably just provide a link below, like for parents, and you can sign up for a free account. Free account you can do pet battle, vocab quizzes and stuff. And if you wish to have more premium features like like voice assisted, read loud, or like the more video lessons, then you can just pay an annual subscription.
All right, wonderful. I'm sure a lot of parents would be very interested to check it out. So I will be adding the link to your website in the video descriptions on YouTube and also on our social media posts. So look out for it. So Dan, I want to thank you for taking the time to sharing with us about what you're doing to help parents and help kids enjoy and to be good in Chinese.
No problem. Thank you for having me.